Hello and welcome to GHHU 2901 Online Research for College Students. This is our third lecture in a series of 10. In this lecture, we're going to talk about research questions and keywords. Essentially, we're all presented with these big giant search boxes, be it in Google or Galileo or those three people who use Bing. So, how do we decide what words we put into these search engines? Do we just put a whole question? I need to buy a computer, where do I buy? Or do we just put computer store? So we're going to talk a little bit about the thought process. We're going to talk about some more complicated ones than computer store, but that at least gives us a basis to understand what this week is going to be about. But before we get too far, congratulations, you made it through week 2. We're in week 3. We're like almost a third of the way through this class. Last week, we watched the film Social Dilemma, or the lecture from the director. We did some discussion boards. Everyone posted, they responded to their peers. I'm really, really proud of all of the work all of you have put into these. Your posts have looked really good. I've responded with a couple comments on them. All constructive, all really positive work. Just a main theme that I've noticed from these, you all are aware that you're being tracked online and that, there is an algorithm going on and how freaky it is that, you think, gee, I should go buy that one thing, and then there's an ad. And I think that's pretty interesting that you were kind of intuitively aware of this. I'm hoping this will help you come to a better understanding that you need to be aware of the information you share online. Many people posted that, Instagram can be very fake, that people post things to make themselves look a lot better than what real life is, and that, Facebook also has a similar kind of vibe to it. So I was super excited by all of the discussions going on in week 2, and, I'm really proud. So thank you. So, thinking about how do we do research? We've talked about information literacy being a lifelong learning endeavor. Well, this is one of those things that many people don't think about until it's kind of laid out. When you're doing research, the first thing you need to do is identify and develop your research topic or question. You've got to think about what you're going to research. After you come up with a good idea about what you want to find, then you can do searches for preliminary information. You can use the library, you can use Google, you could find a book, you could find a lecture online, and then you can begin writing your paper. But you've got to start with thinking about what you want to research. So, this is something that I like to do when I'm writing a paper. Many times college professors will say, write me a paper on Frankenstein or vaccines or social media. You've got to take that very, very general topic and narrow it down. And so whenever I have to write a paper, and I'm going to be honest with you, writing papers I don't think is many people's favorite thing to do, I sit there and I think hard for the first 2 or 3 days. If I can do a week, I will, but 2 or 3 days at a minimum. And I ask myself, why do I care enough to write 5, 10, 15 pages on a topic? What is it that interests me to want to spend all of that time and effort writing? Because I'm going to be honest with you, if you write a paper on a topic that you don't want to write about, it shows in your writing. You've got to be passionate. You've got to care. So one of the questions I like to always think about is, let's say, for an example, you say, I need a computer. We talked about this a little bit in that first lecture. Do you know what kind of computer you need? Does it need to be a Mac or a PC? How much storage do you need? Do you need 256 gigs? Do you need a terabyte? How fast does it need to be? Should it be like a super, super fast computer, or is something, good enough for school going to get you by? And how much do you want to spend? Right? These are all things that kind of go into the I need a computer question, but maybe aren't explicit in those 4 words of I need a computer. So, some characteristics of good research questions. Research questions have one major topic. You're not going to combine things from all over the place and make a really good research question. It's got to be focused on one major thing. It can't be too broad, meaning you can't just say, I'm going to research computers, or I'm going to research higher education, or I'm going to research libraries. And it can't be too narrow. You can't really write a good paper about what's going on at the store down the road because you're not going to be able to find any research papers or things to cite in the work. Research questions should be complex and multifaceted. One of my favorite things to do is looking at a research question and say, yes or no. Has COVID-19 changed the world? Yes. How has COVID-19 changed the world in respect to college? Still a little broad, right? But we're getting more complex. And I can't answer it with a yes or a no because it's a how question. It's very, very helpful to focus on a specific time, a population, or a place. So for example, you all know I'm in a doctorate program. I'm looking at writing a dissertation, which is, goodness help me, going to be about 150 pages. And you got to have a really good research question. And I'm circling in on how has leadership responded to the COVID-19 crisis in the university system of Georgia. And if you think about that kind of question, I'm focusing on a specific time because I'm talking about, COVID-19 crisis pandemic, a certain population. I'm talking about leaders within the university system of Georgia. And geographic location gives me Georgia because university system. The number one tip when you're trying to get a very broad topic into something researchable is do that preliminary search. Here's a little secret. Look up your topic in Wikipedia. Just do a Google search. The trick is you should not cite Wikipedia, but it's perfectly okay to get ideas from Wikipedia. That's one of those major changes, right, when you get into college, is not to cite an encyclopedia, but to learn from it and build from it. Fun fact about Wikipedia, it's actually, if anyone remembers the Encyclopedia Britannica, this was this really big set of encyclopedias that people bought for their homes or the library or anything like that. Wikipedia is actually more accurate than Britannica, which really blows people's minds because they always think, oh, Wikipedia is not reliable, anyone can edit it, all of that. Turns out people care about what's on Wikipedia and they're going to correct the errors that appear. So, thinking about research questions. Here's an example one. That should be Obama. Let's change that real quick. Was Obama a good or bad president? Okay. You could say good or bad and answer that question. Why would you do more research? Good or bad? You all probably are going to just do more research because you've had professors say, defend this topic, defend what you're doing, explain what you're doing. But it would be a lot easier if you had a better question. So let's say, Obama, good or bad president, any of that. Let's say you're talking about Obamacare. And that's what interests you the most about the presidency. Then you can say, how did the Affordable Care Act impact 18 to 24-year-olds in Georgia? So if you notice here, we have a major topic, Affordable Care Act. We have a certain population, and then we have a geographic region. So we're taking that very broad, was Obama good or bad, into something more specific and researchable. So let's look at example 2. How does social media impact people? This is something that after week 1 or week 2, we all probably have some thoughts about. It's an interesting topic. It helps get you started. But if you spent a couple days thinking about how you could write a paper that you would care about social media and people, you might come up with something like the second question, where how does Facebook and Twitter impact the mental health of teenagers? So, for example, here we've taken this really broad topic of social media and broken it out into 2 components: Facebook and Twitter. We're specific, right? We're talking about the impact on mental health, so now we're being even more specific. And then we're talking about teenagers. So we've got really broad topic narrowed down into 2 specific companies, looking at mental health and looking at the specific population. So we've got more complex and in-depth research questions going on here from those very, very broad topics. So here's one of the reasons why this is important. A good research question will help you develop keywords. The keywords are super important because when you do searches, that's what the database or search engine is looking for. So it's looking at things like the author, the title, or the summary, or the abstract. It's looking for those words. So let's fix this. Sorry, all. How does Facebook and Twitter impact the mental health of teenagers? Right? That's our question from the slide before. Well, we could look at Facebook and Twitter, and we could list out the key words like Facebook, Twitter, social media, social network. You can probably go a little bit further here. Mental health, I broke that out. We have mental health, wellness, mental disorder, happiness. We can also list these probably for a little while about terms or phrases that are related to mental health. And then teenagers, right? Teenager, teen, 19 or 13 to 19. Probably other words we can use in there. But we're still looking at the synonyms, right? We're looking at things that are relating to this that an author could have used. You could see an author, instead of writing a paper about mental health and Facebook, instead writing a paper about happiness and Facebook. And that would still be related to the topic, to the question that we have here. Okay, so here's like our first big pivot in this lecture. We talked about research questions. We talked about generating keywords. But we haven't talked about how do we actually search these things, right? So we've got these words, we're going to put it into this big giant search box. But you got to ask what's going on behind that big search box. Well, I've got you. It's Boolean logic. Now, I am not going to make you do logic tables. I don't think anyone has done logic tables in forever. Interesting fact, they did this in math for me in like elementary school. You don't have to do this now, but I just want to explain this is the logic that goes on behind the scenes in the search engine. You know, it's looking for P, meaning is this a term? This is just placeholder P. Is it appearing in any of these sources? T is true, so yes, it appears. Yes, it appears. Yes, it appears. Yes, it appears. F is no, so no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. And then same thing with Q would be another term. So you could say this is Facebook, and this term here is Twitter. And then this is actually or. So you could say Facebook or Twitter. And then does it have Facebook or Twitter? Yes. Does it have Facebook or Twitter? Yes. All the way down until it wouldn't have either. There's an easier way to view this. Let me show you. But first, let's talk about those Boolean operators. You remember I said the and, or you remember I said the or. There's really three Boolean operators that you need to know. The first is and this combines for words or phrases. So if I'm saying Facebook and mental health, if a result has that on or if a database has that in the result list, it's because the word Facebook and the words mental health appear somewhere in that source. I could use or, so I could say Facebook or Twitter, and that would, pull from a source, or it would get a result if it had the word Facebook or the word Twitter. I could also put the word not in there, which is actually one of my favorite phrases to use. So I could say Facebook, not Instagram, and then it would only bring me back results with the word Facebook, and it would exclude anything with the word Instagram. So those are your three major Boolean operators. It's helpful to see this as a Venn diagram. So if you searched Facebook and Twitter, it would just be this overlap circle here. So this would be the entire universe of everything that has the word Facebook in it. And this would be the entire universe of everything with the word Twitter in it. But if I put Facebook and Twitter into the search box, it would only be from this overlap. So it's reducing the number of results I have. If I put Facebook or Twitter, and my third arrow is not showing up. There we go. If I put Facebook or Twitter in there, it would bring me back something from any of these circles, from the entire universe that has Facebook, from the entire universe that has Twitter, and from the overlap. So what do you think this does to your search results? It's going to make them just go crazy. You're going to have so many more results because you're using or. Because you're saying, bring me anything that has this word or this word. One of, I said this earlier, my favorite Boolean operator is not. This is because it really narrows down your result list. So say you're doing a search, and I used Instagram earlier. Say you're doing a search for Facebook, and you notice so many of your results are really about Instagram. Well, you can tell the search engine or Google, bring me results that contain the word Facebook and not Instagram. What that would do is bring you back results only from this universe, and it would exclude the overlap, and it would exclude anything with just the word Instagram. One of the reasons why this is my favorite way to do a search is that it forces you to look at the result list, see what's coming back, and then refine your search based on the results you're getting. So keep this in mind when you start doing some actual searching. But wait, there is more. So we went over the three main Boolean operators, but there's a handful more of some interesting little tricks and quirks about databases and search engines that you should know. For example, phrase searching is incredibly popular or incredibly useful once you get to know how to do it. So earlier we talked about social media and mental wellness. If we put mental wellness into a search box, it would just search the words mental and the word wellness. It may not really be about mental wellness. What we should do is put it in quotes, because if we do that, it's going to treat it as a phrase. Meaning, these two words, mental and wellness, would have to be exactly next to each other to be brought back. It would treat it as if it were one of those A circles, right? Very useful when you're doing names or places or complex topics like mental wellness or social media. Wildcards is another one of these like special cases that you should be aware of. So wildcards return a lot more results. You remember earlier we talked about teens and teenagers. Well, you could just do teen and then the little asterisk or the star right there. And it would use this root of the word teen to bring you back anything that has words with these as the first four letters. So think about how useful that is, right? Think about how many times you're running a search and you could do teenagers or teens, and putting the star there means you don't have to enter all of the different combinations. It will do it for you. Very cool. Just keep in mind, it's got to have the same root of the word. So teen star works because teen has teenagers right after it, and then teens has teen as the root. So your research question leads you to effective searching. So throughout this whole lesson, we've been using this example of how does Facebook and Twitter impact the mental health of teenagers. We talked about Facebook, Twitter, social media, social network as being related to the term Facebook and Twitter. We talked about mental health, having wellness, mental disorder, happiness. And then teenagers is teenager, teen, 19 or 13 to 19, and then tweens. So if this was your research topic, how would you construct this search? What words would you put into the search engine? I'm hoping by now you would not just take this whole question of how does Facebook and Twitter impact the mental health of teenagers and throw that thing into Google. Like, don't do that. Think about these words and think about the Boolean operators. And how would you construct this search? Here are some examples. You could do social media in quotes because that's a phrase, and mental health in quotes because that's a phrase, not Snapchat, and teen, and then a little asterisk, or tweens. I went a little further with the teen thing, but I did or tweens because it has the W in there, which is not the root. You could also do social network in quotes and happiness. You could also do Facebook and Twitter and mental health in exclamation or in parentheses. This is in quotes. Sorry. This is actually probably the best search result you will get for this research question. And from here, you can refine it further. So I would probably take this string and then add and teen with an exclamation point, an asterisk. One thing to keep in mind, don't overuse your phrase searching. Don't overuse those quotation marks. Because when you do, they're so powerful that you might end up with like 3 results that don't really bring you what you need. I've also seen people take like whole questions and put quotes around it and say they're doing phrase searching. Don't do that because that will probably not get you any results. So be careful when you're using phrase searching and that you're only doing it for these topics that are really related and commonly used. You want to think about what did the author say? The person who wrote the perfect source for my paper, did they say mental, or did they say social media, or did they say social network? So you want to be careful. So, why go through all this headache, right? It's the 21st century. Why can't computers just be better? Well, the truth is the computer is kind of binary. And it's working on this Boolean logic. It's working on these and or nots. They can only be as good as our input. Fun fact, and these are the actual technical terms, search engines use spiders or robots to go out and crawl the web. Right? That's kind of funny. spiders crawling the web. But they do this, and they make a big long index. And this is called metadata. That's just data about data. They make a list of all the words that appear in all the sources they index. And when you run a search of Facebook and Twitter, it's doing that logic table behind the scenes. And it's looking for sources with those words of Facebook and Twitter. This is how, Google and Bing work, but it's also how databases like Galileo work. Google is getting a little smarter, and we're going to cover that as we get later in the semester. But you should know, Google is doing one of those things where it's basing your results on what you've previously searched. So if you've put, something into Google before, it remembers that you put that into Google. And then it will base that search result list off of what you've entered into the machine previously. So you got to keep that in mind, that your results in Google may not be the same between you and someone else. And that's all, folks. That's our lecture for week 3. This week, you have one 10-question quiz. That's it. I need you to watch this lecture. At this point, I'm sure you have. Pay close attention. I'm posting the slides online, so if you need to review them, you've got them. When you go into the quiz, there's 10 questions. You can take it up to 2 times. It's untimed. So go in there, take the quiz, see what your grade is. If you've got to take it again, go ahead and take it again. If you have any questions for me in there, just let me know. Send me an email. I'm here for you. We can always schedule a Zoom if need be. All right, all. Have a great week. Thank you.